I participated in a student exchange program a few years back, and this is the third and final video on that experience. Check the links in the description if you want to watch part 1 and 2 first, but each video basically stands on its own. After weeks of living abroad, I began to adjust to my new temporary life. It wasn't the school or my friend Georgiana that made me feel settled, but the mundane daily things. From the cauliflower cheese pie I routinely picked up from Aldi, to waking up to my landlady playing the cello every Saturday morning. From seeing snow from my window to blossoms. And as the midway point of my student exchange arrived, a hollow sadness overcame me. Life was good, but with every passing day, I could see the moment approach where I would have to say goodbye to this life. Goodbye to my favorite crisps. Goodbye to Georgiana. Goodbye to this country. But not everything was sunshine and rainbows. It was the end of one of my weekend strolls through central London. I just had a meal at a Korean place and I was about to go home. On my way to Victoria Station, a young man walked on the same side of the street, but towards me. He smiled and nodded, and I returned the gesture, and I thought nothing of it. But after 15 or so paces, he turned around and caught up with me. He explained he was a tourist and that he was looking for the way to Victoria Station. It wasn't all that far and I was going there anyway, so I told him I would show him the way. Big mistake. Red flag number 1. He already came from the direction of the station. If he had just looked around 20 paces earlier, he would have seen signs. He kept chatting, telling stuff about himself and where he was from, and asking me about myself. Now, I didn't want to be rude, so I gave short, disinterested answers in the hope that he could read the giant subtext between the lines. Red flag number 2. He followed me when I got off the tube at Waterloo. He stuck with me, and this is where I started to panic. There was nowhere he needed to be, he just lingered in my shadow. At Waterloo, I was supposed to have my transfer, but if he followed me all the way to the outskirts of London, there wouldn't be that many people around. I needed to ditch him here, in central London. There was a public women's toilet at Waterloo, so I excused myself and sat down in one of the cubicles and waited for ages. I can't even remember exactly how long it was, but I was majorly surprised to find out he had waited for me outside. My panic intensified, but for some reason I did my best to appear like nothing was going on to the hundreds of travelers and staff members present at the station. To stall, I went into a shop and took a long time selecting microwave meals for the next few days. He intercepted me at the till and paid for my groceries, saying that he was raised that way. To me, however, this came across as him wanting to make me feel like I owed him or something, and he wanted to carry my bag too, but I held firmly onto that. And maybe where he's from, this is normal, but please don't follow young women on the streets when they're being nice to you. He had yapped enough about his trip for me to realize that this city was very new to him, and that he might not realize that you can get on the railway too, with an Oyster card. I made sure I got through a gate with a railway staff member next to it, just because that might make him feel uncomfortable, and I slipped through like the wind. Gone was my shadow. I got onto the train, but for good measure I walked all the way to the front and sat with some random people. The train went south, to safety, though I looked over my shoulder for the remainder of my journey. Even when I already knew he hadn't gotten off the train at my stop. Even though I was the only passenger on the bus as it rolled into my neighborhood. The road between the bus stop and my landlady's house was only dimly lit. A silhouette strolled with a tiny dog. I walked home fast and made sure the door was shut. In hindsight, it's so obvious that I should have asked him firmly to leave me alone, and if he didn't, I should have asked for help. Logically, I know that. I knew it back then too. I kept telling myself he wasn't technically doing anything wrong. I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't want to be rude. But hey, now, a few years later, I'm now no longer afraid to tell someone to piss off. At the university, we had lots of freedom for our final animation assignment. I don't remember the restraints if there were any, but I remember being able to make pretty much whatever I wanted. It could be done in a group or alone. So, alone it was. For one of the other modules I followed, lectures were shaped around researching art and writing essays. You know, before the existence of ChatGPT. I had a crash course in Unity, and an animation acting class from a puppeteer who worked on some major Hollywood films. I finished my final small animation project. It was getting closer to my style today, but I still struggled a lot with colors and brushstrokes and the general design. I had spent many weeks making it, and it got me a passing mark, but eventually it didn't get anywhere. The story was okay, but nothing special. I had taken many shortcuts to save time, perhaps a few too many. I'd cut shots, rushed illustrations. But hey, part of being a student is learning from your mistakes, right? I was slowly preparing for my eventual return home. Walking out of the university doors for the final time was strange. Aunt Georgiana invited me over to a barbecue. One without food. It started in the afternoon, so I didn't think it was necessary to have a lunch, right? Well, she had aluminum one-time use barbecues and put them down on a table. A wooden table. On a very warm, dry summer day. Yeah, that table burned down. But no worries, there was an actual barbecue as well. But none of us knew how to use it or cared to interfere. Georgiana put in a whole tray of chicken thighs and then put the lid on. She looked at it when the sun began to set and the chicken was still raw. Other things happened that party that I probably shouldn't explicitly mention online, but I was only a witness. I can just say that I ended up drawing with neon markers over the hands and arms of random people that I'd only just met and would never see again. And once things got a little too crazy for me, I excused myself and went looking for some place that still sold food. A few days later, I packed my bags. Looking back, the curriculum helped me grow as an animator, but my growth in other areas was so much more valuable. And as I stepped into the airport, I didn't feel like I was returning to something familiar. I was starting over, a new adventure, and for the first time, that didn't scare me as much as it used to. Thank you so much for watching, and this channel is still very tiny, so a like and subscribe from you has a huge impact. Cheers!